All right. Thank you for joining me here, Charles, and for agreeing to do a podcast with me. So this is going to be our first episode in this series of, I don't know what we're going to call the show just yet, but this is going to be talking about design, maybe some stuff, personal stories, and asking the audience what would they also like to hear in this series as well. And Charles and I have been talking about some themes for this episode, but before we get into that, we'd just love to do a quick introduction just in case you don't know anything about us. So I'd love to kick it off with Charles. Charles, can you quickly introduce yourself to the internet, to YouTube, and to whoever is listening to this?
Definitely. Hey, everyone. My name is Charles Briggs. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you, Andres, for the introduction and for also agreeing to do this podcast with me. I know we've thought through a couple different names, but we'd love to hear if anybody else wants to give us some naming options. You can put them down in the comments as well, and we'll have an email maybe that people can send things to. So yeah, my name is Charles Briggs. I'm a product designer, industrial designer. My background is through mechanical engineering, but I just fell in love with design in college and university, and have been designing things ever since. Really, I was a little kid, but more high design as I grew up. And so I know for my side, I'll be bringing a lot of that physical products and look at some of the design themes and trends on that side. But we're also going to be looking at some of the not physical products. And that's where I want to shoot it back to Andres and see if you want to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Charles. That was really good. I really appreciate that. I have so many follow-up questions about your mechanical engineer background. So while I get into
Yeah, we'll get to it.
awesome. So with my introduction, how my name is pronounced, you can say it in many different ways. Everyone that's out there, I don't really mind, but you pronounce it Andres. Like Chris loves to say this. Chris still loves to introduce me as undress, like how you undress your clothes. So that's one thing that
Oh
I've
man.
latched onto now.
Oh
So
man.
if you want to remember how to say my name, that's one way to say it. Well, I'm a trained graphic designer. I have a what is it called? Advanced diploma. What here in Canada, that's what it's called. So I hold that, and I've been out in the field for I think now 4 or 5 years. I actually can't remember. But yeah, I worked in
Okay.
tech for a while, and I like to introduce myself as a thoughtfully careless graphic designer. So my two-word brand, so that there's a little bit of juxtaposition there.
I
So
love it.
that's me in a nutshell.
I promise that I will work on rolling my R's. That's a big problem for me. So Andres, you're from Canada, as you stated. I'm from the U.S., so we're both North American. However, being from the middle of the U.S., we don't roll our R's quite a bit. So if I'll have to use that undress uh, hack that you've mentioned.
Excellent. So I'd love to jump into today's topic, which is
Definitely.
I haven't quite actually formulated a good phrase for this, but bear with us. Bear with us, everyone and out there that's listening. So today's theme is things within things. So this could be, for an example, if you have a dog and you bought a dog toy, and sometimes you see them around, a toy within a toy. So when the dog chews up the first part of the toy, they'll actually unlock another toy, which I think is an amazing concept. And you can see this with other things too, with logo design, other types of product design. And would that count as product design and toy design, or is that something classified
Yeah,
different?
yeah,
Oh,
definitely.
really?
I think anything that you're selling to consumers can be classified as product design. If there are people who don't like that definition, um, email Andres and not me. But yeah, I think anything that you're really selling can be talked to as product design, and that's actually another topic maybe we can talk about in the future, is the idea of physical products versus digital products, and both being called product design. That can be confusing.
Definitely. So, Charles, is there any products out there in the wild that you've seen that's something within something. And if you can name them, or if you can just talk about it, the concept briefly, would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, definitely. I think you see this a lot when there are simple products that people they want to add more features and thoughts to them, just because they think, okay, this will allow more people to want it, more people to buy it. It'll make it more desirable. I'm really thinking about like the multi-tool industry, or like carabiners, if that's a term that is used in Canada as well. And basically, companies will make this thing that has one design, one use, which is to hold kind of multiple things together through a carabiner, and they'll add things like different ratchet heads or different like screwdriver heads to it, knives, really anything, and they'll just kind of pack in all of these different features. And at some point, and this is kind of what we're debating right now, at some point is, when is enough, or when is there too much, and you're taking away from the original design aesthetic. Yeah, so that's something that I'm thinking on the physical side. I have a couple ideas in mind. Maybe we can link them below after the show. But I want to bounce that question back to you, Andres, around in branding or logo design or UI UX. Is there anything where you see a product with inside another product, or design within inside another design?
Yeah, I really love this topic because of that. It's like you're trying to do a two-in-one. So trying to get two things into one, which I think is a wonderful thing. But like you said, how do you know when it's going to be a delicate balance versus forcing something too much into something else? So I know that sounded so wordy, but to give you an example, like the microtransactions that happen in video games is one thing that really pops into my mind about these things within things, because once you buy a game, you can also buy in-purchase games, which I think is a wonderful thing and also a bad thing, because then it's, if you want to unlock these types of adventures or skins or whatever it is that you have to pay more money on top of what you've already paid for. So that always, I don't know, always like have a tug and pull between that, but I totally get it, because it's another way for the company to make money and also keep more employees employed, and to also grow the ever expanding video game, whatever it can be, so it sticks around longer. Because back in the day, if you remember, like Xbox and stuff like that, you just play one game, and once it's done, it kind of sits on your shelf now. But within purchase transactions, it gives it more life, or there's more
Definitely.
side quests and stuff like that. The second thing is, I love when logos do this. So I was mentioning to Charlie before the show is that Baskin Robbins has recently done a rebrand, and it was amazing to see that and remind myself of that logo, because it has the number 31 with the B and the R. So I always
And
think that's cool.
for those who might not be familiar, why is the 31 important to Baskin Robbins?
The cool thing about having the 31 is that there are 31 flavors that Baskin Robbins offers, and it tells you within the logo itself. So I think it's really cool that it does that, and we can dig into that a little bit deeper. I can show everyone what recently they've done. So, but yeah, that's my answer for you, Charles.
Yeah, I would love to dig into that a little deeper now that you've mentioned it, talking about the previous Baskin Robin logo and the current redesign of the Baskin Robin logo. Baskin Robbins, need to say it right.
Whoops.
And yeah, I don't know if you just have some hot takes. I love some hot takes on the differences and the updates and anything that you see that you enjoy. Obviously, you mentioned they carried over the 31 as such an important part of this logo, but I would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen now and show everyone this. So here we go. So this is the new logo. This was an article published on Creative Block, which is a blog that I highly recommend any designer out there to ever check out. There's a lot of cool stuff that they publish here. So let's dig into it a little bit more. So here is the new logo right there. Baskin Robbins. New logo takes the brand in more serious direction. Interesting. So what are your first impressions here, Charles?
Yeah, so I like it. Can we show the old logo as well real quick?
Great point. So let me just zoom out here. So that's the new, and this is the old.
The old. Yeah, so I think their call, and I'm by no means, I need to preface this, by no means am I a branding or logo designer. That's why we have Andres here. I tried to roll the R there. I don't think it worked, but that's why we have you here, Andres. But I'll give my 2 cents, and I like the old logo. You had mentioned your kind of 2 words that describe you at the beginning of this podcast, and one of mine is definitely whimsical. I enjoy kind of keeping some fun in design, and so I like the old one mainly because it gives me some of those whimsical vibes. And you can clearly see the 3 and the 1 in the logo. It's even separated a little bit within that typography. You have a space. Whereas if you really want to go to the new logo, it's obviously they've taken that space out and they've combined it with the B and the R to make it a little bit more subtle. But from what it looks like, the 1 in particular kind of changed the typography of the R a lot more than the B. That being said, in the B, you have some circles for what are those called? The centers of the B, Andres?
They are called bowls, but if anyone out there, if I said that wrong or it's incorrect, please correct me in the comments below. I'm going to say I am a graphic designer, but typography, naming the anatomy, terrible at it.
No worries. Yeah. So the bowls, I don't know. The circles look a little off to me. And I know they're not concentric with the outside of the B. Maybe there's a technical fancy word for that in graphic or in logo design. But yeah, the circles kind of look, I'm going to use the word funky to describe them. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that, Andres? What do you see? What do you like, dislike?
I think we talked about this a little bit earlier before the podcast started, is that it does kind of give this weird illusion. It almost makes it look like an 8 as well. So it's almost like 8-3-1, which I think is, if you look at it too long, then you start creating some of these imageries that might not exist, might not be intentional. So I think that's where the super geometric style kind of fails in a way, but it does have a very balanced strike to it as well. With all that being said, so I see where the designer had thought about this and how balanced and well put it is into the square, because you can see if you even zoom out, you can still see everything, and it's still legible when you're seeing it from far away. And just to talk about the previous logo, the one thing that I did like about, and you talked about it already, is how fun and whimsical it is. And I do love what you said about how the 3 and the 1 are separated. So you can still see that the 2 and 1 elements of the design, the B and the R and the 3 and the 1. But where I think this in particular logo kind of fails is the typography below it. So it's almost too I would say kiddish in a way.
Yes.
And the colors aren't the best, I would say, either.
Yeah.
When you think ice cream, you typically think of a lot of different flavors, and I don't know, there's something that still has to be fixed here. But then when you go back to this one, I don't know how to explain it, but I don't think the color combination here is the best either. So that's another thing that I'm thinking about.
Why would you say the color combo isn't? Without going too deep into color theory, why does it clash for you?
Well, it clashes for me because it seems too chocolatey. It seems like there's only like strawberry and chocolate flavors. So again, this is where I would probably have to dig in more into their brand strategy and understand more of the thought process behind there, because I'm just basing this off first impressions, which is probably not the best idea either. But those are my initial thoughts without having, you know, digging in so deeply into the actual rebrand and the thought process behind it.
Definitely. As you mentioned, kind of the beginning logo and the end logo, or the starting and the end, it definitely makes me feel like they are targeting a a different demographic. With the first one, it's definitely looks geared towards children, or kind of that more whimsical aspect. So, I'm thinking if you're a parent and you bring in your kids, or you ask your kids, where do you want to go get ice cream? They're drawn to this logo, this style, or aesthetic. And then I'm almost curious, I wasn't in the room when they made this decision, but when they kind of made the logo grow up in a certain way, are they trying to do that with those individuals that, they really kind of getting that brand loyalty as the kids grow up and are aging up? Do they want to age that logo up a little bit to retain those clients? So when you're 30, you're not buying Baskin Robbins with the old logo, you're buying the new Baskin Robbins. I don't know. Those would be some questions I would have if I was in the room, at least.
I think that makes a lot of sense. When you definitely going into a more sophisticated design, leaving the whimsical behind, you definitely are attracting a different type of audience or a target market. And I think you're spot on. If we had to make some educational guess here, it's definitely
Mm,
going to be for more of a more mature
yeah.
audience versus, taking your kids out or your niece or nephews out to a ice cream shop. It's more like this is a place to go for a fancy date with your significant other or something
Mm,
along those lines. So that's the other. I like that point because it makes me think of that as well.
definitely. What you had mentioned the geograph or G I'm sorry. My brain just turned off. The geometric design of the new logo. However, I see like the last half of the R definitely is a lot more flourishy. What would be that design like? What is that design language called? Uh, do you know? Versus like a uh,
Okay, yeah. I think it still will fall under the category of geometric, like this little
geometric.
part here. Uh,
Okay.
Mainly because it's going to be relative to the curves and angles of the shape of the
Mm,
actual R. So there is relevancy there. So that makes it geometric in my eyes, is that there is some kind of mathematical curve to that, and it's using it in a very smart way. But geometrical, usually, what I would say, it has to have to do with the types of shapes that they use and how relative they are to the design itself. So you could have a little bit of, it kind of looks like an organic type of shape there, but I would still say that it still falls under the geometric category. Now, again, I could be totally wrong, and I will stand corrected. So if anyone does correct me on this on the internet, please do so and leave a comment below. I think that I'm always learning, and I'm already sweating to think that maybe I got that wrong, but I think I'm right. But again, if I'm wrong, completely wrong, please correct me. Put it in the comments below.
yeah, I know I'm glad you mentioned that, Andres, because I know before mics were on, we talked a little bit about this idea of getting a little sweaty, or just out of our comfort zones with some of these conversations, and we're definitely going to be diving deep, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to do this podcast, is to continue to learn ourselves and deepen our knowledge, as well as being able to share any knowledge that we've gained over our past years of experience in both of our respective fields. So I think it's definitely okay to call out when maybe we can find a better word than sweaty, but those sweaty moments where we're a little out of our comfort zone, and would love to hear feedback as we build this community.
Absolutely. And I would love to turn it over to you now if there are any product designs, physical product designs that kind of do something very similar. I know we can think of what is it called, like a Swiss Army knife. That could be something.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
okay, and if you can think of a really cool example, I know that I think you mentioned this in the intro for yourself, but for me, everyone, I know that Charles is a very outdoorsy person. So I believe he does a lot of rock climbing and he likes to be in nature. So there might be a product that you may use that does two things in one, or something within something. So curious to know if anything comes to mind. If not, um, any example could be cool to
Yeah, I
hear from
will.
you.
I was going to share my screen real quick, but I wanted to make sure that I had all the settings correct before we did that. So let me go ahead and do that where I can share my screen. Is this coming across okay? So yeah, I wanted to use this example of looks like Yettec. This was as we were looking for topics and kind of ideas before the podcast, I found this one on New Atlas, which is a pretty good site for new tech and science. But this really shows the idea of a carabiner, which is kind of this part right here. That's the classic design, and for all intents and purposes, this is really the main reason why you'd be buying something like this. In my opinion, could be something else, but they added a lot of things like there's a driver set that you can see here with a whole bunch of different Phillips and flatheads. There's even a knife section down here, maybe to open boxes with, and you have a bottle opener as well as all these hexes for doing different drivers. So this is a idea here where the original design of a carabiner is just this clip, but what they ended up doing was saying, okay, we can add a lot of other features to it, or you could look at this and say it's a driver first and foremost, but you want to keep it on the go, so they added a clip to it to be able to hook onto your pocket or do something like that. So in the outdoor space, I see this a lot with multi-tools, as well as these kind of multi-tool carabiner kits, where you can see some of them have 1 or 2 extra features. Some of them have 20 extra features. And I think really the thing here is you're looking at the end user, right? With any product design, you're going to be looking at an end user. So who's going to be using this product? And what you can find is if you make something so generic by adding in all these different features, 20 different features to something like this, it can sometimes be too much because you have to make cost trade-offs. Maybe the knife is a little bit smaller, or you add some scissors, but they don't work that great to some of these multi-tools. But maybe those are the 2 features that are what this core set of users want. So you have to make that trade-off between, okay, we want to add all these features to get as many people as possible, versus kind of niching down the product to really fit your target users. Andres, any thoughts there coming up, or what do you see when you look at a product like this?
I love it because it definitely speaks to somebody that is a very outdoorsy person that might not be able to fit a lot of tools in their backpack or their pouches or whatever it is that they need to carry on their adventures with. Because when you're packing for long adventures or even short adventures, you may want to pack a little light so that way you have more room for food or other important items that you may need when you're out and about in a wilderness adventure. So my follow-up question to you is, I don't know if we talked about it, maybe I zoned out a little bit, but did you talk about who this product is for and where would they use it?
That's great. I think you mentioned a couple of the key users, but actually a product like this, I would assume, and I haven't done much research into this company, Yettec. Yettec, if you're out there and you're watching this or listening to this and you want to sponsor us, feel free. We can do that. Send us some of your products, we'll review it. But I would assume, looking at the name, kind of the overall aesthetic of kind of that light tactical aesthetic, I would say this is probably for an office adventurer, is what I would call it. So somebody who is a commuter, a professional, definitely going to or from an office, and they need to do some light tasks throughout the day, but nothing super intense where you'd be carrying around a full screwdriver set or a full blade even. This style blade down here, if you can see it, that's typically used for like opening boxes or things like that. So I would say your light utility, people who are just kind of going to and from their workplace and want to have a little bit more, they want to be able to fix stuff if they come across it, but this isn't like carrying around, an entire toolbox. It's more of a light fix it. So yeah, what was the word I used? The Office Explorer.
Yep, Office Explorer. That makes sense. So it could be someone that maybe commutes on a bicycle.
Yeah, I'm wondering if people would want to carry, like their keys with this carabiner, or if it would be something that I'm assuming it would most likely live inside of a briefcase or a backpack versus exterior.
So, Charles, you're a physical product designer. So when it comes to designing something like this, a 2-in-1 or a several-in-one, it seems that sometimes there might be some trade-offs. So for an example, in this one, when I'm looking at it, it seems that the comfortability of using this might not be there fully. So my question to you is, how much do you think about the comfortableness of using a tool like this versus its actual utility?
Yeah, I'll add a jargon word in there, so this can be a learning moment. Ergonomics is the study of having something fit comfortably. That's actually a really large portion of what's called industrial design, which is physical product design, is looking at the ergonomics of a product. So you can narrow down, once you've narrowed down your target user, you can look at, okay, is this men, women, or a different age range? What's kind of the standard grip in terms of like hand size or some other things, and from there you can look back and say, okay, here's what we want to do to the product to make sure that it can be used. Yeah, like you mentioned, I see a couple pluses with that product. I took it away. I can bring it back up if you would like us to look at it. So a good thing that you can actually see here, and I really like this for their design, is this driver attachment, which is the main bit attachment here. It's in the center from the left and the right of this, or the top and the bottom, as seen in this picture of this product. So when you're actually trying to screw something in, you're at the center and you're not offset. That can really help when you're doing some of those leverages. Similarly, you can see that the main plane, or the big, it's really flat on this side. That can really help with grip as you're torquing down, especially since maybe you can't grip around it fully because it's not, a cylinder or something like that. You have kind of a key almost turning mechanism there, and that can really help a lot as well. So while it doesn't necessarily look, you don't see any big rubber pads that you can maybe say that this helps a little bit, this kind of bit holder in terms of a little bit of ergonomics, but you don't see a whole lot with this. However, it does kind of have some built-in ergonomics in terms of, you're using a really small device and you want to get a fair amount of torque on it, which is like the turning power. And so you want that key design so that way you can really, really get in there with the bit and turn it. Every single time I say torque or turn, I'm, using the motion with my hand to couple with that. So yeah, great question. Any other questions with that?
Yeah, thank you for that answer. I think it's It really shows your expertise in the space, and never thought about that industrial designers, product designers think about ergonomics. I never knew that that was a thing. So is that typically
Yeah,
the first questions you ask a client or your team about how this will fit into someone's hand or feet or whatever the utility is?
definitely. I mean, you want a product to be typically you want a product to be as user focused as possible, and so you have to think about how is somebody going to be interacting with this product, experiencing it. How are they going to be touching it, holding it, storing it, through all of the life cycles, right? And so after you get your key user, um, or your target user, then you can say, okay, kind of like I mentioned before, look at some of those. What's the middle of the range? What's the top of the range in terms of some of these ergonomic um, requirements? And from there, you're just extrapolating out and making it fit your, you want to make it fit the individual and the user, but you also want to make it fit your brand and your mission and purpose. And so there can be some products that are super user focused. A really famous company that does this is OXO or OXO. They're an industrial design company. They basically pioneered a lot of the kitchen gadget ergonomics that you can see around. I'm sure we could do a quick search here real quick to find those. But they looked at a lot of these things. And another kind of real key example of this is actually when you see like things like hammers or anything with a handle, you know how some of them have that ridge, like the finger ridges. It's a little counterintuitive, and it could be controversial. So if you don't like my answer to this, leave a comment down below. But I would argue that that is actually not good ergonomic design. It can be argued in one way where it is, because you have a little bit firmer grip. Those little bumps can kind of help you key your hand, like key into the actual product, so that when you're using it, it doesn't slip out or do anything like that. However, you're forcing, through that product design, you're forcing an individual to hold the hammer one way, instead of allowing the product to allow the user to grip it however they need to for whatever specific scenario. So, in the case of a hammer, it sounds like you only use a hammer one way, but actually there's many, many uses to a hammer in the design of it. And so being able to have just maybe more of a circular grip or kind of an oval grip pattern is a little bit better for ergonomics, because you're allowing multiple people with multiple hand shapes to be able to grab it in a different way. So instead of thinking of a large person being able to grip it and making that grip pattern for them, and then having a smaller individual with a smaller hand size come along and not be able to grip it. So you're actually excluding people with that design rather than including them.
Wow, I never would have known that. I thought
Hmm.
in my first impression, because to let everyone know that's watching this, I would have thought that having the ridges for a hand would be classified as like good ergonomics. Now, again, like you said, there might be some other people that might have differentiating opinions about that, and I think that's okay. I would love to hear that too. Just a reminder for anyone that wants to speak their mind about those types of nuances of product design. And so it makes me think as well as that when you were talking about the different uses of a hammer, I definitely see that, because some people will gravitate more towards the top, and then some people will grab towards more of the bottom because it has more leverage. So depending on the user or the use case, for an example, if it needs to be more of a, I would say maybe a delicate tap, then you probably go at the top. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's very fascinating for me to hear that. Never would have thought of that.
Well, I'm glad I can make hammers sound a little fascinating. Hopefully.
Absolutely. Well, I think we're going to be ending really soon. Was there anything that I
Yeah.
missed in today's topic of things within things, or things that have several uses within them? Is there anything that I missed, Charles, that you want to talk about, or any final closing thoughts on that?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it before, but I think with any product design, whether that's physical or digital, right? And when you're doing things within things, it's really all about the user. And so you want to make sure that whatever you're doing, it's adding something to the user journey, which is how a user interacts with your product. And so whether that's a digital thing within a thing, and it's maybe releasing some of those magic moments or those moments of joy to a user as they're using your website or using your software product, or with a physical product, if it's a thing within a thing and you're adding utility or adding another way that you can just enjoy that product. I think making sure that it is all coming down to the user rather than and making those trade-offs with things like profitability of the product, or just packing in features to pack in features. That would be kind of my parting thought to everyone is it's always about the user when you're looking at some of those things. But Andres, I would love to hear from you if you had any closing thoughts, and then we can kind of do a wrap up and maybe a tease for the future.
Thank you, Charles. I think you answered that really well. I don't have too much to add into that, is other than showing restraint when using these types of methods, or when you're thinking about having two-in-one type of product design, or other types of design. So, for example, like graphic design, is to think about the user. Are they going to get it? Who are you talking to? It all makes sense, in my opinion. And I think I don't have much to add other than that. So we can move on to any of the teases that you have in store for us.
Yeah, that sounds great. All I kind of wanted to do here at the end was do some light announcements. Since this is the first podcast, kind of wanted to give you an intro onto what the rest of the podcast looks like. When are we going to be doing some releases and having topics and different things like that. So really, Andres, you might need to refresh my memory, but I believe we're going to be launching new episodes every week. And I know for sure we will be putting these up on YouTube to start, and potentially a pure audio version online as well, wherever you listen to your audio podcasts. But I know that we're really looking at creating this video podcast and having this video element to it. So maybe we can come up with some fun ways to keep the video alive. But Andres, is there anything else that I'm missing besides the weekly updates? Are there other things that we'd want our community to help us out with or to know?
Yeah, I think if anyone out there wants or has suggestion for topics to cover, would love to hear them in the comments below. We definitely will be monitoring that too. And any feedback that you have. Now, I'm a little scared to say that, but if you have things that we can improve upon, whether that's our setup or the way we run the show, yeah, we'd love to hear it too, because we generally want to just educate, help people out there with our experience, and to make the design industry or design topics a better experience. I think that everyone has a really good point of view, and that we have really cool lenses that we look through in our day-to-day, and it's awesome to share that knowledge with other people. So that's the last thing that I have. And like Charles said, that we're gonna challenge ourselves to upload once a week. So I'm thinking potentially maybe every Sunday. So we film on Friday, publish on Sunday, so we do have some time for editing, and we'll just keep it kind of raw. Like we're not super polished, as you can tell, or we're just getting into this, but we just genuinely love doing stuff like this.
Yeah, and I wanted to also just echo. I know we did some intros at the beginning of this podcast, but if you'd like a longer episode, kind of going into our backgrounds and like how are we at all. How do we have any sort of experience to talk about these things, or any qualifications to talk about these things? Please let us know, and we can do a podcast where we go a little bit deeper into Andres and myself's backgrounds and different design things like that.
Absolutely. If you want to hear more about our origin story, would love to talk about it. Charles has a very interesting background, and we grew up very similar, and maybe very similar to maybe other people out there that are potentially listening to this right now. So I would love to end it here, and I would love to thank all the viewers, how big or small the view counts are. Thank you for joining us today, and we really appreciate you watching our first episode. So thank you and take care.
Thank you.